Hello and welcome to the Too Much Apparently podcast. If you're new here, this is a podcast for the deeply feeling, overthinking, emotionally overloaded humans who've been told they're too much apparently. And if you're back, thanks for choosing to sit with us again.
We're Alice and Carly, two therapists who are also just sensitive weirdos trying to make sense of life, healing, and our own brains. This isn't a professional advice podcast. It's more like the messy, honest conversations that happen when you finally feel safe enough to say what you're really thinking.
This space is for people like us, the ones who've been called too sensitive, too serious, too emotional, too intense, and have spent way too long believing that it's true.
Okay, on with the episode.
Today we're talking about being too different to belong.
And not just in obvious places like school or work, but even in the spaces where you'd expect to feel safe. Family gatherings, friendship groups, cultural or community spaces, even therapy rooms sometimes.
It's that hollow feeling of, I should belong here, so why don't I?
We're going to explore where that comes from, why sensitive and neurodivergent people often feel it more, and how to navigate the ache of not quite fitting in. So I'm very tired today and you're ill.
I am ill. Yeah, I'm recovering ill, but recovering much slower than I would like. So I'm a bit coughy and spluttery, which I'll try and mute myself for.
Might make an appearance
Might
occasionally.
make an appearance, yeah.
And I feel like my words might not make sense, so you're in for a good time with this episode. Coughs and mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, we'll make it work. How are you feeling about this episode?
Apprehensive. When we first knew that this was the episode that we were going to do, and I was thinking about the kind of things we were talking about, I didn't actually really think that much of it. It didn't strike me as, oh, this is a bit of a difficult episode. I just thought, okay, this is what we're talking about next. And it was only last night when I was like, oh, what is it that we're doing tomorrow, that I had a quick look and I thought, oh no, that's quite a vulnerable topic. And then also because I'm just really feeling quite tired this week, I think that's ramping up my vulnerability levels even more. So yeah, I'm a bit apprehensive and I'm finding it really hard sometimes to know what personal experiences to bring and also talk about in this space, because some are harder, but I would feel okay talking about them. And some of them are a bit more raw and a bit like, ooh, do I want to say that? Do I want to put that out there? And then of course, I'm questioning, okay, well, why don't you? And going through all of that. And I'm still not really sure.
Right. Yeah. I feel kind of split with it. I feel like part of me feels quite settled. I feel in many ways and in quite a few spaces that I've been in, especially this year, but the last couple of years, I've actually started to feel a sense of belonging in ways that I haven't in the past. So in some ways, I'm feeling quite settled with it. But in other ways, I don't think we can talk about belonging without it being vulnerable. And or for me, certainly talk about places where I haven't belonged that really are still quite raw.
Yeah. When you said part of you was feeling a bit settled, I almost felt my nervous system just take a breath a little bit, like, it felt grounding to just hear you say, I'm feeling a bit settled. It was almost like, I was like, oh yeah, okay, maybe I can feel a bit settled. But you're also right. I think the unsettled feeling is more about past experiences, which do still feel raw. And even though they're experiences that I've spoken about previously, I've discussed these things in therapy in the past. So I've done quite a bit of work myself trying to understand these things, and they're still raw. Yeah.
So I'm wondering where we start. I feel like it would be good for us to both say a bit about our relationship with belonging.
Sure.
Do you want to go first? Do you want me to
It's like, do I want to go first? Relationship with belonging. Well, I think it's fair to say that it's been a difficult relationship. It's not that I haven't experienced belonging, it's just that it's always been hard and very effortful, I think, to try and feel that sense of belonging. Well, when I say that, what I'm really talking about is friendships and things like that. Growing up in my family when I was really little, I think I did have a greater sense of belonging in terms of my family when I was little. I know I've spoken quite a bit about not feeling belonging in family, but reflecting on that, I think that's more in later years when I started to notice that there was a bit of a difference between how some people in my family are in the world versus how I am. And then I started to notice that distance and maybe not feel as much belonging. But I think when I was like little, I did have that sense of belonging, I think, within family, definitely like within my immediate family at home. I also had some friends on the street where I lived growing up. And again, there was still that sense of difference in me, but I also had moments of belonging as well. So yeah, when I'm thinking ultimately about a difficult relationship with belonging, my memory is going straight to like school and
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm finding it harder to belong with friends.
Yeah. Um I think to be clear, at school, I've always had friends. I've always been in certain friendship groups. And so I did belong in a friendship group, but the sense of belonging I had inside within the friendship group was always something that actually, it felt vulnerable. It didn't feel secure. So I think I'm kind of thinking about this on the fly, but I think I had moments of feeling like I belonged, but it felt fragile. It felt like it wasn't secure and it depended on several factors. And if I was to fail or let my guard down in any of those, then the belonging would be taken
Mm.
away. And so I experienced momentary belonging. um, yeah, it felt fragile. It felt under threat.
Yeah. Okay. So is that like conditional belonging?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I would say conditional belonging, but I don't know where the conditions were coming from. Were they
Mm.
external conditions or were they internal conditions? Was it the pressure that I was placing on myself to feel like I had to be a certain way, or was it coming from external? My sense is I think a lot of it was internal, but potentially it was a bit of both.
Can you say a bit more about the fragility? Like what was it that would have felt like that would have ended the belonging? Or what was it that kept you in a place of belonging?
So the main things I can remember, and I think when we're talking, whenever I'm talking about the past, I really have to rely on my felt sense because my memory is terrible. So there's also like a part of me that is sometimes like questioning the accuracy of certain memories. We do tend to have a bit of a negativity bias when we look down. Memory lane, the negative, of course, stands out more than the positive. So I'm trying to hold on to that as well as I'm reflecting back. So a lot of this comes from my felt sense rather than specific thoughts or examples that I had at the time. I mean, you can remember thoughts from when you were like at nursery, so it's probably different for you. But I feel like I have to rely a lot on connecting to that inner child version of me and connecting to the felt sense. But a memory that I have, which I know at the time I felt so much shame around, that kind of connects to this is so I am someone that really values honesty and being honest. And I think that's something that's always been important to me. And so it's felt really confusing to me that as a child, I went through a phase of lying a lot at school. And I used to tell people all sorts of lies and pretty big, clearly not true lies. And so there's a big part of me that's like, well, why did I feel the need to do that? And so the biggest lie I can remember, which is the one that is just absolutely ridiculous, but I kind of love that I lied about it, was that I told everyone that the Spice Girls were my babysitters.
That is brilliant.
So, they just took time out of their busy schedule to come and babysit a little girl in Derby for no reason.
Brilliant. In between their world tour stops.
Yeah, yeah. That's like, sorry, we can't do a gig in New York actually, because we're babysitting this 8-year-old girl, back home. I don't know why I thought people would even remotely believe that, but I literally with such conviction told everyone that the Spice Girls were my babysitters. So that really makes me laugh.
Mm.
That's not where the shame part comes in. I just find that hilarious. And that's the main lie actually that I remember telling. But the reason that I know I must have lied a lot and where the shame part comes in is because I do have a clear memory of this. So it obviously impacted me. is I remember being in the school playground and all of my friends talking about this show that they'd been watching, and they were all talking about it and the characters really animatedly, and I'd not seen this show. So I pretended that I had also seen this show and was like, oh yeah, like so and so character. I loved when they did that too. Whatever, just playing along with it, because I guess the idea of not being able to be a part of it was pretty painful. And then one person in the friendship group pulled me to the side to, I can even remember that it was down the side of the school, and that I don't know why this detail is important, but the outside walls of my school were like pebble dashed. And I remember like my back being against the pebble dash and like her being stood in front of me. And she literally cornered me to say, we all just made that up to catch you in the lie, and pulled me to the side to tell me this. And I remember like the heat sensation that you get that just like spreads all up your face, and just feeling absolutely horrified that I'd been caught out in this lie, but also that they'd all grouped together to stage this thing to catch me in the lie.
Yeah.
And oh, the shame that I felt at that point in time, that I'd been caught, and been caught in such like a public humiliating way.
Yeah.
And also, it probably wasn't the nicest thing of them to do, but also at the same time, if I was lying a lot, I could also understand why people would get fed up of having someone constantly lie to them about it, especially about the Spice Girls. Like, come on now. So I can empathize with what it might be like to have someone in your group constantly lying to you all the time. I can't remember lying all the time, but that memory shows me I must have frequently been fabricating and telling lies for it to become such an issue that people feel the need to point out, look, we're getting fed up of you lying to us all the time.
Yeah.
But ultimately, with thinking about that a lot over the years, the conclusion that I can come to is the desire and need to fit in and feel like I belonged must have been so great, that I must have had such a strong feeling about that, that then it became necessary to lie in order to feel included and to fit in and feel that sense of connection and belonging. So I must have not been feeling that all the time, I think, in order to have done that in the first place.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like such a painful experience. And I'm just really aware of feeling so protective and having to kind of remind myself that they were kids too. Not
Yeah.
to excuse them, but to bring some kind of context, and that there were kinder ways for them to have handled that.
Yeah.
I wish they had. I wish they had, because that just sounds so intense. Like I could,
Yeah.
like as you were telling it, I could feel like, that kind of spotlight feeling. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it really did feel like that. And there were better ways to handle it. And we were probably, I don't really know how old we were, eight,
yeah,
9, 10, maybe.
yeah.
So yeah, there's no grudge or anything being held
No,
there.
yeah,
And it was a really crappy experience.
yes, yeah. Listening to you talk about that took me back to something that I have in my mind a lot, which is about the importance of belonging. You said about it, you must have really felt that need to belong so strongly to do that. And I think a lot of struggles that we have in terms of our mental and emotional health come back to connection, which I think comes back to belonging.
Hmm.
I think it's a really kind of central thing. I think I had kind of similar experiences of belonging and also not belonging. You said you kind of focus more most on friendships. Know that if I have a particular focus, but when you were talking about being younger and feeling like you belonged. So last week I went round to my sister's house, and my sister is the keeper of our family photo albums. So we got those out and I had a look at them, and that brought back a lot of memories and really felt a sense of belonging looking back at those. I felt quite nostalgic for that sense of belonging. And I think I'm thinking more about family, I suppose, when I'm thinking about that. When I was younger in my family, there was definitely a sense of belonging, both in terms of my immediate family, so with my mom and my dad and my sister, but also in the wider family as well. And I feel like I think in my head, I saw it as we were very close as families. I'm not sure how true that was, but we would spend time, we would see each other at Christmas. When you have a friend that you haven't seen for a while and you just pick up where you left off. I
Hmm.
suppose it was kind of like that with my cousins. And so my mum's family lived near-ish, about 20 minutes away, and my dad's family lived 2 hours away. but I always felt like I belonged when I was younger. So I suppose it's kind of both, that there were experiences of belonging and with, with friends as well. When I think about primary school, I feel like I belonged there. Even secondary school, I felt like I did. But I think woven throughout all of it, so it perhaps feels maybe contradictory, that I can look at the same kind of image in my head, if you like, and see a lot of belonging, but also pain of not belonging as well.
Yeah, I really relate to that. I feel like that's almost like what I was trying to get across as well. It's almost like if I look through one pane of glass, through it I can see belonging, and if I look through another pane of glass, I can see not belonging at all.
Yeah, yeah. And I think now I put some of that down to, a child's level of awareness and also what was normal. That I thought what I experienced was normal. And I think to some extent it was normal. I think we all, I think all humans have a sense of phases of feeling like you belong and you don't belong and feeling like you fit in or you don't fit in. Obviously, some of it I think has come from recognizing that I'm neurodivergent and those kind of just those misses in kind of social cues and social connections that I can now understand better knowing that I'm neurodivergent. And I think some of it is about I'm not quite sure how to word that next bit, except that it's got a flavour of emotional neglect in it. That because I've always been such a kind of deep and curious and emotional person, and I think I was that way even when I was quite small, that actually being surrounded by people that weren't that way, I think that's always then had that thread of feeling like I don't quite fit in, feeling like I don't quite belong, feeling like I'm different in some way. And I think also there was a geography element to this. And this is how I explained it to myself when I was younger, that my primary school was a 20-minute bus ride away from where I lived. I don't really know why. There was a primary school in the village that I lived in, but my mum decided to send me to the school that my cousins went to, which meant that when the kids on my road all went to school, they all went to the same school and I went to a different school. And same again, I mean, at secondary school, we were at rival secondary schools. I don't know if you had rival schools near where you but yeah, so when I was on my road, I didn't belong because we didn't go to the same school. And when I was at school, I didn't really belong because the kids there would, they lived on the same road as each other, so they'd play out after school together or they'd go to clubs together. And there was always just that little bit of I don't quite fit in either category. Thankfully, as I went through school, there were a couple of girls that came to live kind of on my road, so we were able to make that journey together. But yeah, I just think it is tough. I just think it is really hard, and I think it does just have such a big impact on us and really shapes how we see ourselves as people.
And also, as you were saying, what's in our control and what's not in our control. I mean, the geography of where you lived and the school that you went to was not something that was in control, but of course had an impact on you because it meant you were disconnected from the people in your community and on your street. And as children, we're beholden to parents. So we can't just travel to see friends that live somewhere else.
Mm.
Listening to you there, it's kind of making me think of the things that were outside of our control, but would still have impacted our sense of connection and belonging.
Yeah.
And I also think you made a really good point about the difference between the way we were seeing belonging then as the child and the way we're seeing belonging now as the adult reflecting back on us as a child.
Yes.
And the difference between that, I always thought, like you growing up, I always felt like I had a really, really close family because we all did a lot together all of the time. And so, in one sense, we are a close family because we did things together way more than I knew any other family did things together. And I used to really love that. And it wasn't until I got older that I thought, oh, we're not close in the way that I would like to be close to family because also things are still quite, even though we see each other all the time, they're all still quite surface level.
Yeah.
People still don't talk about things.
Mm.
And sometimes you hear things on the grapevine and you're like, well, how did I not know that that person went through that? Because it didn't get spoken about. And so actually, we were close in proximity, but we weren't close as in like deeply like close and connected and knowing of one another. And that was then something that I came to realize I always felt really like happy that I had such a close family. And I'm so happy that I had a family that did loads of things together. I have such fond memories of family holidays and of Christmases and special events and things like that. But then I also came to feel a sadness at realizing, oh, we're not actually close in the way that I thought that we were close, in the way I would like for us to be close.
I can really relate to that. Really, really relate to that. And like as you were talking, I was like all sorts of memories were popping in my head of different things that I've done with different family members and really missing that. And I suppose it's normal. You kind of grow up. Some of us have our own families, some of us don't. But yeah, there's more people. So, so there is going to be that change. But yeah, I do really miss that. I do really miss the kind of the getting together Christmas keeps popping into my head. I can't think of specific other times, but I know that it wasn't just Christmas.
Mm.
Like one memory that's popping into my head was me and I think my sister and my cousin went on holiday with our grandparents to Wales. And I can just see me and my cousin doing some sort of dance routine and singing to Billy Piper's song. I can't remember the name of it now because we want to, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
In the playground at this caravan park. But yeah, all kinds of fun memories and just yeah, just feeling easy and connected and being part of something. Yeah, it just feels really like nice and warm and kind of fuzzy in my stomach. But then also I feel like it does sort of I almost then do kind of land with a clunk into what is life like now. And because yeah, I think there was that recognition for me that while we did things together, it was almost performative closeness. And part of me is like, don't say these things. This is going to be really offensive. I don't know if my family listens to I know my sister listens, but I don't know if anybody else listens. And I don't mean it in an offensive way. I think I just mean it in I wanted more closeness. I wanted to really know, like, how are you feeling? Kind of like we were talking in the small talk episodes about want surface level chit chat. I want tell me about you, tell me about your soul, and I'm not quite getting that. And also the difference between like my mum's side of the family and my dad's side of the family as well. And also the difference between how I thought things were and how things are now. And I think particularly on my dad's side of the family, I think that's definitely because my dad's mum, my grandma, was the kind of linchpin of the family and held everybody together. And since she became ill, she had dementia and died in 2012. Since then, it's not really been the same. So even though now I live a lot closer to them, I don't I don't really see them at all, and that just feels
Right.
really sad. That
Yeah.
does feel really sad. Yeah. So actually, my life. I think I've said I'm estranged from my mum on the podcast before. If I haven't, there we go. But since then, that has obviously changed the whole kind of structure of how I see family, and has really made belonging a focus for me over the last few
Mm.
years. Thinking about right, okay, now I don't have that aspect of belonging. Where where else do I find it?
Yeah, where you can get it from and where you can
Yeah,
still feel that sense, so it's not so
yeah,
much of a hole.
yeah. I'm
Um,
really feeling the heaviness of this episode.
yeah, listening to you talk about that is also making me think about how perhaps later in the episode it'd be useful to think about where we can get that sense of belonging,
Mhm.
where we can find it.
Yeah,
Do you think is there a difference between fitting in, being included, and truly feeling like you belong?
I think yes, definitely like massive difference. Massive difference. So as you're listing that out, it sounds like there's three: fitting in, being included, and belonging. Is that how like there's three separate
Yeah,
things? Yeah.
that's what I can think of.
Yeah. So the first thing that pops into my head is Brené Brown, who says that I don't know if she says it quite like this, but the way that I understand it is that fitting in is the opposite of belonging.
Mm.
And I think that's a really important distinction. And I think it's really important for people to know because I think you can spend a lot of time and energy and money trying to fit in. And you might fit in, but then you're still left with just that emptiness of like, I still don't feel like I belong here.
Well, just
Um,
quickly to chime in, Brené Brown also says that being accepted as your authentic self is true belonging, and so that's different from fitting in.
yeah, I think that is exactly how I see it. that, so when I said there about spending so much time and money and energy trying to fit in, that's not being authentic. That's trying to, kind of chop parts of yourself off or present in some different way to be acceptable to others. Maybe that's it. I'm thinking about being accepted and that's not the same as belonging.
Mm-hmm.
But then you added in being included, which I've not thought about before. I'm kind of thinking about this on the spot, but I'm thinking about like you can be reluctantly included in something and
Mm-hmm.
you can like you either know that explicitly or you can kind of feel it in the micro interactions with people. So yeah, I suppose that is another also important distinction even from fitting in or belonging.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how do you see that, the difference between the three?
Yeah, well, when you were talking about being reluctantly included, I just had an image in my mind of a child starting school later than everyone else and being put into a friendship group by a teacher and saying, "Oh, can you look after them and show them around?" And then being like, okay. Yeah, where you're reluctantly invited to be a part of a group or a birthday party or something, and what's that is like. Versus like being included because people want you to be there. Their party would not be the same if like you weren't able to be at their party, and just how nice that feels as a child.
Completely different feeling. Completely
Yeah.
different feeling, and I'm just gonna jump in briefly because I do have so my mum moved my school when I was in year 11, so it was October half term of year 11, so late to move schools, and I was exactly kind of as you described, like, "Oh, here's this person, look after them," and they were friendly enough, but it just made me think about the tiny things that can make you feel like you don't belong, especially at that age, which I think has a big impact on our sense of whether we belong in spaces or not. But at my original school, all the girls wore big, chunky heels, kind of almost like platform style. But in the new school, everyone wore ballet flats.
Right.
And like even just that tiny detail was like, oh, I don't I don't belong here. And actually that was too um, probably more complicated than just the shoes. Um, but I actually decided to go back to my old school after 2 weeks.
Oh, did you? I was
'Cause
going to say that's a huge thing to change schools in year 11.
yes. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't just that, but I desperately wanted to go back to my old school.
Well,
Yeah.
the difference, I know you said there's more to it, but again, the difference with the shoes and the fitting in, it's oh, over here, like I'm getting it right, but we can move environments and suddenly now I'm getting it all wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and
Mm,
such tiny things that seem inconsequential,
yes.
that can just highlight that you don't fit in.
Yeah. And when you were talking about fitting in and belonging, if you try your hardest to fit in with a specific group and you're constantly trying to think about how you're being, what you're wearing, what you're talking about, what you're laughing at, what you find interesting, and you're really trying to monitor all of that to make sure that you fit in with this group, then it is, of course, I'd almost say impossible for you to then feel like you actually belong because you can't belong. I guess what I'm saying is, I feel like you can't belong unless you're being yourself.
Yeah, and as I was preparing or for this episode, thinking about what we talk about, I was thinking about it kind of relates to what I've been learning on my masters that I've just started, but really thinking about that balance between authenticity and connection because and I think this scares people a lot. I definitely see it in the people that I work with is that they if they feel like they just go full pelt authentic, one that people won't like them or they'll just be rejected. But I think there's also a fear that they'll become arrogant or like
Mhm.
kind of diva-ish or not care about anybody else. And then that misses the connection part entirely. So I think it is a really complicated balance, actually, because I feel like to some extent you have to make some effort to fit in for social cohesion. But that if you go too far, you lose yourself. And also, there is no scientific formula that can tell us exactly how much to be authentic and how much to try and fit in. Does that make sense? Do you agree with that or do you see that differently?
I think I kind of disagree.
Mm.
Maybe it's about the type of what it means to fit in, what it is that then you're doing in order to fit in, and whether or not, I guess I'm thinking, is there a way that you can do something to fit in that is also not self-abandonment, that
Yeah.
is also not compromising yourself? And so perhaps there are different levels where fitting in can lead to some sense of connection and being part of a group, but maybe it really depends on what that is. I guess I'm saying it feels like it's a lot more complicated than that.
Well, what I heard you say was what I was trying to say, so maybe we agree and I just didn't say what I meant very well.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. But I'm not sure. I feel like that's something I'd need to give more thought to in terms of, oh, okay, what might that actually look like? And what is classed as trying to fit in versus not?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, you use the term self-abandonment there. And I think that is key for me when
Hmm.
I'm thinking about getting the balance right,
Yeah.
is how can I approach a situation in a way where I'm not abandoning myself? Because that has been such a big pattern for me,
Hmm.
to try and morph and fit into what people want or need or what I think they expect of me.
Yeah. That morphing, that camouflaging, or also sometimes even performing, not in a way that's about deception, but is ultimately coming from that place of survival. I mean,
Mhm.
we know that it is a survival strategy to try to fit in and to have that sense of connection. Prehistorically, being excluded from a group would likely mean death. So it's important to try to stay part of a group. And we know that that's important for our mental health and well being in order to do that. I think nowadays, though, it's potentially more about how much time and effort we're putting into fitting in,
Mm.
maybe to the wrong group.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that would feel more true connection and belonging if we found a group that actually where we could be our more authentic selves.
Yeah. My perfectionist part is jumping in with like, tell me how to do it. Tell me how to do it perfectly.
Yeah.
There must be some way that I can instantly know what's the right group for me and how to behave to make this as smooth as possible. But I think my experience of this is that it can be quite messy.
Mm.
I feel like I'm being really negative today.
Why do you feel that?
Maybe because it's something that I haven't ever really found easy, and I
Mm.
so desperately want it to be easy that I
Yeah.
look at some people sometimes and they just seem so good. I don't know if they tend to be extroverts. I don't know. I don't think they are, because I think I'd even put you in that category, because I feel like you're so
What
good at
category?
being like so good at like making friends and belonging.
That's so interesting to me. I feel like I was trying to go like, why? Why do you think that?
Because it's what I see you doing, like connecting with people. And yeah, I feel like you've got lots of connections. I think you are a lot braver in reaching out to people than I am.
Okay. I think
Uh,
ultimately, I think where that comes from, and it's taken a lot of practice and a lot of, I mean, just for people listening, I'm thinking that you're talking about me making connections with people in the online therapy
yeah,
world.
yeah.
Yeah. And so asking, like randomly messaging people and saying, hey, do you want to meet for a Zoom coffee has taken a lot of effort. And I've had many Zoom coffee meetings where, like, underneath, like, my hands are shaking and I come off like sweating. Thankfully, it's not that intense anymore, but it was like that for quite a long time. But because I've come from nursing and being in groups and having teams of people and then working totally by my own closed up in the house, I was also really determined to make those connections. And the other place where I think that it comes from, and this is what I went through school like, so just, I guess, going back to school, is, and I feel like this is just going to be a real neurodivergent thing to say.
Mhm.
So I grew up watching a lot of American TV. I was one of like the first people I knew to get cable. We weren't well off, so I don't know why, but ultimately one of the first people I knew to get cable. So I was watching like all the American teenage school type shows. And as I was watching them, I really felt like this is how life is. This is how life should be. And this is what school's going to be like and how school should be like. And I know when I went up to secondary school, had a very clear idea of how it was going to be. And then I got there and it wasn't remotely like that at all. It's like, what? You mean going to a school in the UK is not the same as a fictionalized school in America? What are you talking
Mhm.
about? And it wasn't like that at all. But I had taken lessons from the shows that I watched, and the lessons were, in order to belong, you have to be pretty, you have to be fashionable, the boys have to like you, and you've got to be popular and not be too much of a nerd.
Mhm.
And I literally took those as lessons that
Right.
I then had to try to incorporate. So when I started school, it was almost like, right, I need to try and be pretty. I need to keep up with fashion. And I would read like Vogue magazines, like to try and like keep up with the fashion and what was going on with fashion. And I was interested in fashion, but it was more about needing to fit in. So
Yeah.
I would keep up with the latest fashion trends. And so it was almost like, right, this is my mission. I've got to become popular. I've got to be seen as pretty. The boys have got to fancy me. And these are all the things that I've got to do. So I started school with all of this like pressure to become all of these things. And of course, none of that happened.
Mm.
And I struggled a lot at school with friendships, but continuously put this pressure on myself throughout all of school to still try to obtain these things. So even though it wasn't working and it wasn't happening, the pressure never went away. And every new school year, I went through this whole process. So at the time, I had like a single mom who didn't have much money, bless her. But every year, I'd be like, right, I need a new coat, I need new shoes, I need a new bag, I need a new pencil case, I need all new pencils. Everything had to be new. And my mum, bless her, like would buy me all this new stuff. And so it was almost like I would treat every September as like a reinvention of myself.
Mm.
And I would tell myself this year was going to be different. And I kid you not, usually within the first 2 weeks, something happened that I felt ashamed about or humiliated or embarrassed for that wrecked it. And then I'd have to wait till the next school year so I could do the whole process again. And that happened every single
Mm.
school year. It was just like this constant reinvention of self in order to be able to achieve and do these certain things. And I partly feel like that drive in me hasn't actually gone away. And I've tried to look at it and work at it a bit more. And it's not fully there for the same reasons. But when I started to do online therapy in the therapy world, and there were people out there who were quite prominent online therapist people doing things, it was almost like the same thing. Like, I need to make these people my friends.
Right. Mhm.
If I'm going to fit in here, I need to get to know them, and I need to get to know
Mhm.
them, and they seem really cool. And
Mhm.
so it was almost like, again, in order for me to feel okay in this space, I need to do and achieve these certain things.
Yeah. It's so interesting hear you talk about that. And actually right at the beginning where you said like, and don't be the nerd, I think you said, I was like, that's me. I'm the nerd. I'm the
But I
one.
am the nerd. But I am.
But yeah, I don't think I even had it sounds like there's a strategy there for you. You're thinking about how you needed to be. Well, I just don't think I even had that at all. I remember going up to secondary school was a massive shock for me. So I was one of the oldest in my year at primary school. I it, kind of despite what I said about not fully belonging because of the location difference, I feel like I was quite popular at school. We all just got on. Like everybody just kind of got on. But I think I felt like a leader in primary school. I was often top of the class and yeah, felt like I knew my place. And then when we went up to secondary school, I don't know if I've spoken about this before. When we went up to secondary school, I think a lot of my friends were the younger sibling and I was the oldest sibling. So they all knew what to expect. And I just distinctly remember turning up on the first day and they've all got their ties tied short in the way that everybody did back then. Whereas I had mine properly all the way down and shirt tucked in and very proper and just that instant feeling of like, I am a fish out of water. And I think my way of coping with that is just to kind of withdraw. Since then, there was then just repeated ways of withdrawing. And then was 14, I got my first serious boyfriend. So then he became my focus. So friendships kind of fell by the wayside. And then when that relationship ended, I was quickly in another relationship. And again, he was the focus and friendships fell by the wayside. Although that was different because he had a massive group of friends, and I did feel like I belonged there in that group of friends. Very quickly, they welcomed me into that group, but then when we separated, they dropped me again. So,
Right. Yeah.
so that was tough. But I think that's kind of been how I've coped with it, is that my focus has just been on whatever relationship I've been at the time,
Yeah.
as a way to, I think, as a way to escape the difficulty of navigating belonging in other ways. And in the therapy, the kind of therapy online space, I think I felt more. So what I hear you saying there is you kind of see all these big names, and you're like, right, okay, how do I get in with these people? Like, how do I get them to like me? Whereas I think where I would look at it is more like they've got something I haven't got and they won't be interested in me. And
Okay.
that
Mm.
absolutely has, my kind of trauma story running throughout it of people not being interested in me. But yeah, it's something that I'm actively having to challenge now as I'm thinking more about what do I need to do to belong.
What comes up for me there is like literally be yourself, because when we did our coaching thing together, and it was only like probably the first time we were all together in a group that I thought she's cool. I need her to be my friend.
Yeah, it's so I think part of the way that the trauma that I've experienced has impacted me is that just give up on the idea of belonging. I think is how it works. It's not a conscious process. It's not like
Yeah.
I'm sat there thinking that. Part of the progress in belonging that I have made is in learning to accept what people are saying to me, learning to accept the nice things that people are saying to me, and not just from politeness. And I've definitely had that from you. And I met up with another friend on Tuesday, and she sent me a voice note afterwards. And I was just like, how is somebody saying these nice things about spending time with me? It's so outside of the story that part believes. The point I'm making is that it feels like a surprise when I belong,
Mhm.
and that actually is active work because of what I've been through. It takes active effort to allow it in and to trust it. It doesn't feel, I think what I imagined was there'd be some point at which it would just feel easy. Um,
Mhm.
well, maybe I have reached that point because when I started my master's a couple of weeks ago, that is how I felt. And I went in on the first day, and I'd had some interaction with the group because they'd added me to the WhatsApp chat before we started in person, but not a lot. But as I arrived in the morning, someone gave someone else a hug. And I was like, oh, I'm not at the hug stage yet. And then, like 10 minutes later, one person gave me a hug. And then I got loads of hugs. I must have had like 10 hugs. It was
Really?
amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And then we did this exercise, which was about how okay we felt. Like, did we feel okay in ourselves? And did we feel like other people were okay? So if you felt like okay and other people were okay, you stood in the middle. If you felt like you were not okay and other people were not okay, you'd be at the back of the room and then other people were at the sides, depending on where they were. And I feel like every time, and like almost my whole life story is I would be at the back firmly in I'm not okay and other people are not okay. But this time I was like, I'm in the middle. Like I feel okay and other people feel okay. And, it's new. And I'm sure there's going to be ruptures and difficult periods through this process. But that did feel easy actually. So that was nice.
Noticing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice to notice that. When you were talking before, I feel like I'm taking it back to a negative now, so maybe I feel like I should
No, no,
sit
go
longer
for it.
with how nice that was for you to recognize that. But there was a real sadness that came up in me listening to how hard it is for you to accept that people like and value you and have nice things to say about you. And then I also felt the sadness for myself that there is still a part of me that doesn't feel worthy unless these people like me and approve of me and see me as worthy of being friends. So it's almost like you're in a place where you felt like it's not even worth going there. They're not going to want to be my friend. And I'm at a place where in order to feel okay, I need to make sure that you think I'm okay.
Yeah, there's part of me that's like, "Oh god, can we just cut this out of the edit?" Because it feels so vulnerable. And part of me that feels like, actually, no, I think it's so important that we keep it in because I think so many other people kind of secretly carry this around with them. And there's definitely part of me that's like, oh my gosh, Alice, you've done so much therapy and you've done so much work, and there's still this pain. And I don't want to worry people that are new to therapy, or, I don't want them to be left feeling like, oh, this is never going to change, because it isn't how it was back then.
Hmm.
Like, even when I'm saying that it's still there are still parts of me that feel really vulnerable with it. The image that's come to mind is that I used to have that part and it was drowning in distress. It was drowning in the distress of not belonging, not fitting in, not being okay, not being wanted, not being, whatever that long list is, because it was long, that it was drowning. And the way I see it now is it has armbands on.
Okay. Yeah.
And all of these positive experiences that I've been able to have through going through the therapy that I've been through. And I would love, love to really recommend group therapy for this, because it was transformative for me. I thought I was going to go to group therapy to learn how to make friends with people, again, like some kind of formula. But actually, what I got from group therapy was being accepted by people in, yeah, in a way that is just deeply held in my core.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that because I think if you're socially anxious or you struggle with being in groups, the idea of going to group therapy is terrifying. The first time I went to group therapy, I woke up and I felt so sick. And I was like, why on earth have I agreed to do this? This was a stupid idea. But yeah, I just want to kind of throw that in there, that group therapy is such a good option for anybody who is introverted and terrified of being in a group. Group therapy is where to go.
I know, and well, that's the strange. It almost sounds paradoxical, but it's almost that's why group therapy is so amazing, but also why it's so hard to even get there in the first place.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so I mean, and both, individual therapy as well. So individual therapy, group therapy, but all of the things that I've been able to do because of the stuff that I've worked through in therapy have become the armbands. Now I'm sat on the edge of the pool, like I'm sat on the side of the pool with the armbands on, and sometimes things can happen in life that feel like something's come along and pushed me back into the pool, and I'm a bit like, oh.
But then you're able to swim and get back out and sit on the edge
Then
of
I'm
the pool again.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
And that doesn't make, when I'm in the pool and my arms are flailing around and I'm like, oh no, how am I back here again? It feels awful. And I think that feels important to say for anybody who has also been through a lot of therapy that still sometimes wonders, like, oh, why am I still struggling with this?
When listening to you talk about that's making me reflect on my own process. And I would say it's a bit of a hard reality, isn't it? But unfortunately, when you've had certain messaging and experiences for a significant proportion, if not all of your life, I wish it wasn't the case, but unfortunately, it is going to take a long, long, long time to start to unlearn those messages and try to be different in the world and accept different things or good things about yourself. And it is not something that's easily fixed. And it is a really, really long process. And so, you, as a great example, this is something that you're still trying to work through. But it's a huge difference to feel like you're maybe drowning in the bottom of the pool to being sat on the edge of the pool with armbands on is a really big difference. And even though there is part of me that still seeks out validation and a sense of worth by whether or not people like me and want to be my friend, the difference now is, well, I'm showing up largely more as myself in those spaces. So now my desire to be liked isn't dependent upon me trying to get you to like me. It's more going as I am, and I still want you to like me.
Yeah.
And so I would say if I was to notice the difference for me, it's that I'm now really trying to show up as myself in spaces, and I'm still working on the other part of still needing people to like and accept me, but at least I'm showing up as myself.
Yeah. I just see it as an ongoing process. And I think in the beginning it would have scared me if somebody had said, you will always have times where you feel like this. Whereas now I feel like I probably will always have times where my vulnerabilities get pressed on and I feel unsettled and, really shaken and like I don't belong at all anywhere. And I feel okay with that now, as uncomfortable as it is, and as much as I wish it didn't happen, that I've got enough experiences of working through it, of coming out of it quicker, of knowing how to ask for help. It's unpleasant. Unpleasant is too mild, but it's manageable.
Um, as usual, we have so much to say on this, and we've missed so much of what we wanted to say again. It's good that both of us right now are really enjoying doing this podcast and currently plan to keep going because there's so many things I want to revisit, this being
Mhm,
one of them.
It's such a big topic, isn't it? And has such a big impact on people's lives. It would be good to end by saying a bit more about what's made belonging possible for us.
Yeah.
And as I hurtle towards my 40th birthday in January, I think a big part for me is just that it's just not caring anymore. And I don't mean in a in an aggressive way or in an arrogant way, but just in a time is precious. And I've spent a lot of time trying to be okay for other people. And I just don't have the time. I just don't have the energy to do that anymore. And maybe it is as I kind of, do be more myself, like I was in the pod coaching and the second one and, some other spaces that I've been in and find that people actually do like me, that I become less invested in morphing myself for people that aren't quite right for me.
Mm, yeah. When you said about not caring, I was reading my book just before we joined the call and I highlighted a little line in it. And it said something along the lines of not caring being like the ultimate act of rebellion. And I was like, oh, I like that. And I highlighted it. And so perhaps maybe there is something about leaning into rebelling against this idea of needing to fit in order to belong. And that actually maybe you can fit out. That doesn't work. I was trying to be clever, but no. But
Yes.
maybe you
Yeah.
can actually find more ways in which to move more towards your authentic self. So rather than just be your authentic self,
Mhm.
start to move more towards that. And of course, this sounds like actually this is probably a good idea for a future episode. Many of us that have spent a long time molding and shaping ourselves might have lost touch with who our authentic self is. So at some point, maybe we should do an episode on identity and finding out actually who our authentic self is.
Mhm.
But the more we can start to move towards that in certain spaces, the better. And ultimately, it was a little bit like we said, I can't even recall what episode it was now, but where we were talking about a bit more like finding your people. Oh, it was the depth episode and like trying to find people who can relate to your depth and trying to go to different spaces where you might find those people. I feel like there is so much about finding your people, finding your tribe, finding your crew, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
But when you can take those steps forward to start to try to find that for yourself, is where you can find belonging in the right spaces. And there are going to be spaces within which you don't belong because maybe you don't belong there. They're not your people.
Mhm.
And there are spaces where you will belong. It's just about finding them,
Mhm.
which I recognize sounds very simple to say on paper. It takes a lot of hard work and getting over the anxiety, or, well, not having the anxiety, not getting over it, having the anxiety. Like I said, when I was trying to connect with people online doing the calls, feel literally coming off the calls, like sweating and shaking from having done it. But it's ultimately what I needed to be able to get through in order to be able to start to create more of those connections. And a lot of that was just about finding my people. And it is okay for people to not be your people. It is okay for you to not be people's people.
Mhm. Yeah.
I said it'd be mumbly jumbly this episode.
Mhm.
Very eloquently put. But essentially, I think you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I do. I do. I'm curious. Do you think you would still feel kind of shaky and sweaty if you did coffee chats now, or do you feel like you've like having done so many that you've worked through that?
No, because I've worked a lot through it, I don't get sweaty or shaky anymore. I get a bit nervous about conversational flow and awkward silences still. I think that's just always going to be the case, but it's not, I still have it, but it's now manageable. I can tolerate those feelings. The other ones were not. They weren't manageable or tolerable, but I had to push through.
Yeah.
Whereas now, if I was to send a message to someone and say, "Hey, you want to meet for a Zoom coffee? It'd be great to get to know one another," that it pretty much just feels fine.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Where you said about rebelling, part of me was like, I cannot. And what that made me think was, I think it's so important to find your own way forwards with this.
Mm.
That for me, I don't think it has been so much about rebelling. It's been more about reconnecting with myself. And I don't think I do work with lots of people who feel like they don't know what they want or who they are. And I can relate to that on some level, but I think I've always maintained some level of connection with me and what I want. For me, it's just been much more about being okay with how I am, accepting that how I am is okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I love a formula. I love a structure. I feel like I said that a few times this episode, but I think that is just how my brain works, that I just want a checklist or some path I can follow that will get me to where I want to go. But
Mm.
actually, it hasn't really been like that. It's been more, I didn't join the pod coaching to find friends. It never occurred to me that that was how it was going to be. But actually, that's been one of the best things that I've got out of it. Like I said with the group therapy, I didn't go there expecting to get what I got out of it.
I'm kind of hearing, and again, I know this is very easy to say, but there's part of this that's just do it.
Yeah, yeah,
That you don't know. There are so many unexpected things that can come from giving
yeah.
things a try, even when we're scared to do so.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't wanna kind of dismiss how difficult it is because I've absolutely been in spaces where if somebody had said anything that sounded like, "Just do it," I would have been like, "I can't."
Hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
some of that it is then working with or for me has been working with a therapist to get past, what is that? Kind of peel away some of those layers to get to a place where not where I'm not scared anymore, but where I can do it scared.
Yes.
And sometimes that's turned out terribly and has felt like it's set me back a bit, but most of the time it's felt like it's propelled me forwards,
Yeah.
and been a really good thing. But yeah, for me, if I think about belonging and the way forward, it's a really important part is being more connected with myself and being more protective of myself, I think. Of not having that internal narrative of I should be this and I should be that and I should be the other, but actually to be able to say to myself, okay, this is different and it's still okay. And I'm different in this way, but I'm still okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I also just want to put in there that when we are finding it really hard, when the fear is so overwhelming that it is hard for us to just do it, that there are other things that we can be doing in the meantime. And I know in the past, I have managed to get a lot of connection and belonging through having online connections, particularly during times when I've been really struggling mentally and couldn't really get out much in the world. That okay, I don't believe that online can replace, a fully online world can't replace what it means to have that in-person human connection. But I also believe that you can have it, and in some cases it can be just as real
Yeah.
and just as close and connecting.
Yeah.
And so if that's what we need to do right now in order to be able to get some connection and belonging, there are some amazing online spaces where you can make genuine connections. And sometimes those online connections can lead to having in person connections. I mean, every single therapist I've connected with has been through online methods.
Really?
So I met you through an online group. And yeah, every therapist I've met has been through connecting with online in the first place. And I've also had friends in the past that I've connected with online and then coming to meet in person. And so when we're spending time in the right places and in safe online spaces, that we can find genuine connections that can still be amazing even if they stay online. And sometimes they can lead to in-person stuff, or sometimes online spaces then do in-person meetups that are organized and things. So there are things out there. Sometimes it's just taking the time taking the time ultimately to give them a go and meeting yourself where you're at. So if where you're at right now is in-person stuff seems too scary, then maybe just start online.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, really good. And absolutely, I've got great experiences of connecting with people online. One of my bridesmaids at my wedding was somebody that I met online, and I didn't never met her in person until she came over from America for my wedding.
Really? Oh
Yeah,
my God, that is so
yeah,
nice.
yeah. And we're still connected. We're still connected now, which must be, gosh, it's probably no, 25 years. Am I?
Really, that's incredible.
That makes
Oh,
me
that
feel
feels
really
so
old.
nice
That
though,
makes
just
me feel
imagining
really
that.
old. I think I was 14 when we met. Yeah, yeah.
Oh wow, that I love that so much.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh well, I feel like we
Right.
definitely need to bring this episode to a
We
close.
do. We do. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So if like us, you felt too different to belong, you're not alone. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means the space you were in couldn't hold your fullness.
Belonging isn't about shrinking yourself. It's about finding or creating spaces where you can show up as you are.
So this week, notice, where do I feel most like myself? What tiny moments of belonging already exist for me?
Next time, we're talking about being too sensitive to watch the news, that pull between wanting to stay informed and feeling crushed by the weight of the world.
But for now, we'll leave you with this. What would belonging look like if you stopped trying to fit in and started following what feels true?
That's all from us today. If this episode made you feel a bit less alone, the best way to help us reach more people is to subscribe, rate the podcast, and follow Too Much Apparently on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Those simple clicks help other sensitive humans find us when they need it most. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon.